Hello there, Nikhil here, and this is a 15k subscriber thank you video where I will be answering the questions that you left for me. I'll try my best and hopefully this will be interesting to watch. I think this will be way longer than I thought, so let's begin. I will try not to butcher any of your name as I read these, so please bear with me. Diane asks, what was your first Super Robot Wars? What do you think about Ben Presto trying to turn Super Robot Wars into a yearly product instead of taking their time? It is a terrible thing, or is it reasonable considering how competitive the video game market is, especially considering that the trend is that online games with premium models sells? So this covers a lot of the questions you guys asked actually. My first Super Robot Wars is Alpha on the PS1, although I never beat it at that time. I never really got into it until I played Alpha 3 on the PS2. I booted the game, I started with Cobra, and I was hooked since the first stage because you get to play the new Gundam in the first stage and the animations for Amuro looks amazing, I thought. And the workabout, the original mech of Cobra was really cool, and you get access to like a lot of your end-game unit really quickly in that game. So, and yeah, Alpha 3 was awesome. It hooks you in immediately. As for the second question is the annual releases of Super Robot Wars. To be fair, we are not quite sure yet if they're gonna stick to this format. There was almost a 2 years gap between Tengoku-hen and Wii, and it was only X that literally came out a year later. It's hard to discern a pattern over just 2 games, but maybe they're still testing it out, or they're just like trying to make full use of all the assets they made before the Vita dies out or something like that. That's the optimistic look, I guess, at it. Generally speaking, if Super Robot Wars becomes annual, I mean, how many video games franchise do you know that gets a new game released every year and remain good? I don't think one exists aside from maybe the Yakuza series. But even the Yakuza series like alternate between like spin-off and the main game. It still feels like a new game every time one comes out. Especially also since the quality of the writing is always high. And I think that's the main underline of all of this. If they could put out a game every year, but they could somehow rotate series enough that every game feels new, and there's enough new things in a game that draw players in to buy, because the reason why X and to an extent Wii and Tengoku-hen doesn't sell as much as Jikoku-hen is because when Jikoku-hen was announced, the promotion materials and all that makes the game actually looks new, because of course there's a lot of like new sprites, they're updating to HD animations and all that, so people were into it, they're gonna buy it. But X is, just judging from the promotion video and all that, it just seems like the exact same game as Wii minus a few different things. So older fans are not gonna buy it because they have already pretty much played it. And new players are just gonna choose between Wii or X. I mean, they're not gonna buy both, they're just gonna buy one, and maybe if they like it enough, maybe they will get the other one too. But I don't think that's usually the case. They might just look into the older games instead of just buying X after Wii or vice versa. As for how reasonable it is from the marketing side, we never really know. I mean, it's clear that the sales are lower, but every Japanese game's sales are lower at this point. I mean, how many niche RPG franchise do you see that makes a new game every year? Because that's just the better business. Lower production time means they could spend less on production, and while they don't sell as much and the game doesn't seem as new, they could still make enough money from all the fans buying the game and keep it going every year. Like for all we know, like Ben Presto could be making more money than ever at this time, especially considering how many updates the Cross Omega mobile game gets. That game could be like the real backbone of the franchise at this point. I guess my point in all this is it's hard to tell at this point because they just got done from set 3 and the release pattern has been like mixing up recently, except for maybe the OG game. Those games still have like a few years in between. The 3D team is working on a different series, and we still have no idea what the handheld team has been doing. So I did say remain optimistic and wait. Like some people say that we should be glad that we're even getting these games to begin with, but in my opinion, Super Wars will never die out anytime soon. They're still using these games to sell models, to like promote products, other anime. Like I'm pretty sure Fullmetal Panic 4 won't ever get made if it's not because of Super Wars. So yeah, just remain optimistic. Let's see what they do in the next few years. If the franchise turns into an annual release, then so be it. I guess we'll still get the high-end OG, we'll still get handheld games that are different. Butthole McGee, great name dude. Butthole McGee asks, what is your dream series list for a Super Wars game? Stay awesome, buddy. Well, thanks dude. My dream series list for Super Wars is a list that allows for the most creativity from the dev standpoint. Like I could list down my top 15 favorite series, and if you put that in one game, I'll just be like, no, that's not what we want. Like Super Wars has polarizing opinion on each game because the cast lists are different and people like different series. But in my opinion, the best cast list is always a combination of a few of your favorites, so maybe like the few series that you really like and you always want them to appear, and a returning of an old series, a series we haven't seen in a while and returning, a debut of a brand new series that you may or may not have seen, a debut of an old classic that you may or may not have heard of, and just maybe one like just out there series that you have never heard of before and you never expected to ever be in a game. Like those kinds of combinations are always going to be the best. Like just putting all of your favorite in one game most likely won't create a good game because the cast don't match. Take a look at UX. I wasn't that excited for UX at all, but it turns out to be like one of my favorites. So I think that's partly why the newer games feel a bit stale, because judging from the interview, like they say that nowadays they just pick a list of series that they could use in order to maximize commercial value or something like that, and they just design a story based around the cast. While before they pick a theme and then they will pick a series based on that. But yeah, that's my take on a series list. Raiden asks, because I'm new to your channel, I want to ask if you're able to read the story in Japanese. What's your opinion over how they changed the story of the original series? So I'm currently doing my degree in Japan. Even though my main course aren't taught in Japanese, I still do learn Japanese over the course of the last year. I'm able to read and make sense of the Super Wars story at this point, with maybe a few like dictionary checks of the kanji. And if the dialogue is voiced, I can pretty much perfectly understand them, unless it's like really technical dialogues. As for the second question, I'm not sure what you mean, dude. Do you mean that how they handled the original series in each game, or you mean the OG game itself? If you could kindly clarify on the comment section, I'll answer you in text. J-Knight asks, favorite Gundam or any mech in general? Favorites, much like music or movies, they do change over time. But if you ask me now, my favorite Gundam is probably like the Crossbone, Full Cloth, the new Gundam, or the Exia are like my top favorites. That's not much of a unique answer, but it is what I like. In terms of any mech in general, I really like Arbalest from Fullmetal Panic, and the Gunbuster is my favorite super robot. I also really like the Jehuti and the Anubis from the Soul of the Ender series. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the designer of the Metal Gear series should really be working on more mechs in general, like his designs are great. Santiago asks, which is your favorite Brand Presto original character and mech? Well, my favorite is still the first one I ever beat a game with, which is Cobra in the Workbow. I can't wait to see this guy in OG graphics. Like, we haven't seen any form of the like Astronauts in the OG games yet, because of course like Ingram pilots the Argon in OG1. So once these guys are animated, it will be gorgeous and original. Bass DS New Type asks, what software do you use to edit your videos? I use the Adobe Premiere CS6. If I need an extra asset, I usually make them in Photoshop or After Effects. I have a bit of experience with filmmaking and graphics design because it used to be my part-time job, but I guess it doesn't really matter that much when I'm just making gameplay videos. But just in case someone is looking to start a channel or just starting with video stuff, like all of these high-end video editing software, like Premiere or Final Cut, like these softwares, they all essentially do the same thing. They just do it by clicking things differently, I guess, so to speak. So just pick one that you could afford, pick one that you already have or like, then just stick to mastering it, learn what all the shortcuts does and learn what all the tools does. Because ultimately editing is just about like what you can do with the tools that you currently have. So as which Super Wars game do you think is the best for people who want to get into the franchise and why? And the worst? Well, the worst is easy. The worst is definitely Operation X10 on the PSP. God, that game was horrible. I would not make my worst enemy play Operation X10. No offense, of course, if you like that game, but I hope they don't make games like that again. The best game to start with is always the game that has the most of your favorite series. Of course, the definition of that kinda differs depending on the person. A lot of Western fans like Gundam Wing a lot, so that's rather easy. A lot of Super Wars has the Wing Gundam. So just pick, I guess, one of the recent one, and it's really easy to get into. If your favorite series is more obscure, then it's gonna be a bit harder. But just generally speaking, like the recently translated games like V and X is definitely a good choice to start with. So you won't even know like which animations are recycled or not. So it will all be fresh to you. The cast list, I think, has enough variety that I think most people could enjoy it. And it's also in English, which is one of the things that matters the most. If you don't mind the language barrier, of course, I could also recommend the original SAT game or Alpha 3, which is also the one I started with. Because they're modern enough that it's really easy to play and they're not too hard, difficulty-wise. Steel 7 asks, what is your take on the playable cast per series decreasing starting on SAT 3? It sucks. Like, I don't know much about animations, but I'm pretty sure the cost of creating all of these attacks are much higher than what they used to be. Like, making one of these HD sprites probably costs more than making attacks for like the whole series back in the day. Because back then, the sprites are still mostly static, and there isn't that much dynamic that goes into the animations. And that's why the playable cast will remain low, because they can't really afford to make that many units anymore unless you want the animation quality to be also lowered at the same time. But the thing that sucks the most though, in my opinion, is that since the playable casts are low, the game doesn't have any reason to use a squad system, and I really love the squad system. Like, it's one of my favorite things in Alpha 3 and SAT. Like, you have this amazing system that you built that lets you deploy more units in one stage and you fight more enemies. But now instead of doing that, they just stick to single units because they could just make less playable character and they don't have to design a mechanic around the squad system. So it just comes off as really lazy design. So yeah, I really hope the squad system makes a return. Like, even just a twin system is better than single units. Do you lay Frontier as I'm a simple man, so my question is also simple. What is your favorite and least favorite Super Wars title and why? Also, congratulations for the 15k subs. Well, thanks man. Well, my least favorite off the top of my head is definitely OE. Just right now, I think OE is the lowest this franchise has gone to in a while. So my favorite is probably Alpha 3 still, because it's my first game and I think the cast in that one is the perfect for me. The first set is also up there. W and UX is also, in my opinion, the best in terms of the handheld games. W is especially really good. If you haven't played it, you should play it. It's one of the best one. The only flaw being the game is way too easy. In terms of difficulty, I think F Final or Alpha Gaiden is like the most fun gameplay wise, because they're more slow and methodical, so you have to plan more over your units, but they are not like too imbalanced like the older games, so it's still like fun. Freezer said as congratulations for the 15k subscribers. Thanks man. You see, I'm planning on buying Super Wars V and X, but I don't have enough money to afford these two. So I originally planned to just go through the cast and tell you which game is better at which point, but But I think if you have trouble picking between the two to begin with, I think it just means that you have no preference on the cast between the two games, which I can understand why since they're really similar. If it comes down to this, I personally would just say buy Wii, because I believe you could get a new copy of Wii for almost half the price of X at this point. So just get Wii for a cheaper price and play it. You can also try X later down the line as well. I think Wii is a more well-made game overall, but X has like a few more unique, interesting units. The return of the Hainu, the Nightingale, the Machine Kaiser. But those units are, in my opinion, they're more like flashy new content. I personally think Wii is overall more solid, whatever that ultimately means to you. But yeah, if money is a problem, just get Wii first, cause it's cheaper. They are more or less really similar games. Gray asks, why did you decide to do videos for the English community? Did you learn English or do you always know it? If so, why did you learn it? English is my second language. I use English for education purposes most of my life, although I still mostly communicate in my home language. So for the sake of like creating videos and just doing these things in general, making videos in English is much easier for me. Why did I make videos for the English community? Is I don't think it was much of a choice. I guess it was more, if you're making videos for YouTube, you're most likely just gonna naturally do it in English if you use English to begin with. Of course, you might notice that I recently put the Japanese name of the video in front before the English title because while my channel is built on an English community, a big part of my viewer base, like more than 60%, is actually Japanese, so I just decided to just appeal to them as well, which has been working out for the channel so far. Jolan asks, what is your take about the direction the mecha genre is leading now and your thoughts about Super Wars X? Also, congratulations for 15k subs. Thank you, man. One of the like popular anime YouTube guy, I don't remember his name. He made, I think, 20 minutes long like mecha genre analysis. I think that video is pretty good. You should check it out. The mecha genre kinda peaked like a decade ago with like Code Geass and Gurren Lagann in 2007. And even not counting those two, like at that time there was also like Eureka 7, Fullmetal Panic, Macross Frontier, Gundam 00, Die Guard, Die Buster. Like those were the shows that came out during the time when I was really getting into this genre. So those times will always be the golden age in my mind, even though I think a lot of you guys will argue that like the Machine Gun set times will be the golden age. I think ultimately we can all agree that after like 2010, there hasn't really been any show in a genre that reached that point. In fact, I don't think we will reach that height again anytime soon. Although we're definitely gaining the traction back this year. We're getting Fullmetal Panic Season 4. I haven't seen it, so I don't know much about it, but Darling in the Franxx is one of the more popular anime this season and it's a mecha show. Code Geass Season 3 is also returning this year, I believe. I think we're definitely gaining the momentum back, so I'm quite excited for that, yes. As for my thoughts on Super Wars X, I mentioned it earlier, but in terms of like playable units, X does have a bit more of an edge than Wii. In terms of the overall game, X feels rather shallow, like Wii felt more like a solid game. So take that however you like, I guess. So guys, I'm actually gonna have to split this video into several parts because I haven't even answered half the questions and I'm not sure how long the final video will be, but I have been recording for more than an hour. And my voice are really running dry because I'm also recording for another video that you're gonna see. I'm gonna cut off right here. If you have more questions, feel free to still leave them. I might as well make this a running series for now. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Thank you for the 15k and I'll see you in the next video.